Okay, so in section 2, we are going to be using the same angle pairs that we learned about in 3.1. The only difference is we're going to straighten up those lines and make them parallel, and then those angle pairs are going to either be congruent or they're going to be supplements, and we're going to see which ones are which. And we are going to determine that from this list of postulates and theorems. Now, actually, the first one is the only one that's a postulate. Now, notice in bold here, we have the words, if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then that sentence or that phrase needs to go in front of each one of these. So, for example, the first one, if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. Then for the next one, you would repeat that same phrase. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Now, these theorems and postulates have a special name. We will be using these as reasons in our proofs. Now, if you forget the names, then what you would do is just restate the postulate or the theorem. Now, come up with some kind of acronym so you know which one's a postulate, which one's a theorem. Maybe call this first one, it's the only postulate you have. Maybe you can call this one the cap. So corresponding angles postulate. Then the rest, the alternate interior, alternate exterior, and consecutive interior, those three are all theorems. Find a way to help you memorize these. Basically, once you find or identify the angle pair, then you can give it its measure, knowing that it's either going to be congruent or a supplement. All right, now notice in this figure here, I've actually got two transversals. Now, remember these white arrows that are on the picture here, this is indicating that my parallel lines is this line and this line. Whenever you see an arrow, in this case it's a triangle, but whenever you see something like that, sometimes it'll just be this. That indicates that those are the parallel lines. Now, I actually have a transversal over here, and I have another transversal over here. More than likely, this is what's going to happen to you on your quiz, and probably on your test also, where I'm going to give you more than one transversal. Now, what you could do is, if seeing both transversals at the same time confuses you, maybe take your hand and cover up. So like, for example, maybe put your hand on top of this one and only look at the red transversal with those two yellow parallel lines. Then when you're done with the red transversal, then go back to the green. Whatever's going to help you. Now, my advice to you is don't sit here and try to answer these questions in order. When you're asked to fill in an entire picture with a bunch of missing angles, treat it like a puzzle, and let's fill in the different puzzle pieces. Now, before we learn section 3.1, can somebody tell me an angle pair that they see in this picture that wasn't in chapter 3? Maybe something from chapter 1 or chapter 2. Anybody know an angle pair in here in this picture? Tori?
Angle 1 and 2 are linear.
They're what? Beautiful. Okay, 1 and 2 are a linear pair. Anybody see another special angle name?
Vertical angles.
Beautiful, vertical angles. We're going to use both of these vocabulary words, vertical angles and linear pair, to help us fill in all of these missing angles. So what I could do right down here at this bottom part is I can fill in, and even this one over here, I could fill in and answer the questions to find angle 8, 5, 6, and 7 without even learning or having learned chapter 3 yet. Anybody know what the measure of angle 8 is going to be?
9.
Yes. Okay, it's a right angle. So you would put 90 degrees here. Okay, now yes, Dylan.
Why does it look different from, why is it such a big box? I don't get
I guess just to be able to surround the 8.
So if it's like okay.
As long as there's a box there or a square, that's indicating it's a right angle. I guess they just tried to surround the 8. All right, now let's go over to this section right here. Can anybody tell me how you can find the measure of 5, 6, or 7? Ethan.
Subtract 130 by 180, and then that's going to be 55, and then 6 are vertical angles, and 5 and 7 are vertical angles.
Okay. So, all right, so Ethan said that I'm going to subtract it from 180, and I can find that it's 50 degrees. So that would give me the measure of angle 5 because it's a linear pair. And I can see that angle 6 is vertical to that 130. And then I can either realize that 7 is a linear pair with the 130 or that it's also vertical to angle 5. So now, to find the rest of the information up here, I need to use what I learned in 3.1 and in 3.2 here. I need to know these special angle pairs. So, can someone tell me what I can do to find the measure of angle 1? And tell me what you're using. Yes, Tori.
Corresponding angles,
To which one?
angle 1, angle 5.
Beautiful. Okay, and we just learned that corresponding angles are congruent. So angle 1 is going to be 50 because it's corresponding to angle 5. Now, we could have also used angle 7, and angle 1 and angle 7 are alternate exterior. Now, once you find one missing piece up top there, I can do the same thing I just did for 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and I can use my linear pair, I could use my vertical angles, or I could go back and figure out the other special names. So angle 2, can somebody tell me a relationship between 5, 6, or 7, or the 130 at the bottom? Angle 2 is what to angle, one of those angles? Yes.
Angle 2 is alternate exterior to angle 6.
Beautiful. So 2 and 6 are alternate exterior, making angle 2 and 6 congruent, so it's 130. Now at this point, you're probably better off just filling in that 1 and 4 are vertical, 2 and 3 are vertical, and now you're done. When you go to fill this picture in, there's always only going to be 2 angle measures. Okay, so they're all going to end up being linear pairs. Once you find one, you can subtract from 180 and then fill it in. Okay, so we filled everything in like it was a puzzle. Now we're going to go back and answer the questions. So we can clearly see that angle 1 is 50. Angle 2 is 130. Angle 3 is 130. Angle 4 is 50. Angle 5 is 50. Angle 6 is 130. Angle 7 is 50. And angle 8 is 90 degrees. All right, this time it's asking us to find the missing values. It's asking us to find X, Y, and Z. Notice the little arrows. So I've actually got 2 pairs of parallel lines here. So I've got this green one is parallel to this green one. And then it's also showing me that this one is parallel to this. Now, when you get your test, you may have to turn your paper sideways and around and upside down maybe sometimes to see the relationship. I know it's nice when we use our iPads because we can change colors. So I do have a box of colored pencils that I can pull out. But my advice to you is bring a good eraser because sometimes colored pencils are kind of tough to erase. So bring a good eraser because I do not have erasers. So if you want to color code stuff when you take the quiz on Thursday, you can use my colored pencils. You don't have to. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to look to see, can anybody tell me what the relationship or how I can find the measure of angle X? Which parallel lines would I use, red or green?
Green.
The green ones, good. So I'm going to use the 2 green lines, and then I'm going to use this one top red line here as my transversal. Anybody know the relationship between x and 110? What kind of angles are those, Chris?
Alternate interior. Well, actually,
Let him.
something interior.
Okay.
Let's see, I don't know.
All right. So in relation to the transversal, are they on the same side or are they on opposite sides?
Same side.
Good. So these would be same side interior angles. Anybody can answer and tell me what same side interior angles are? Are they congruent or supplements? They're supplements. Good. So to find the measure of angle x, I'm going to subtract 110 from 180. And I can find out that the measure of angle x is 70 degrees. So this one's going to be 70 degrees. So angle x is 70. Now, we're going to have to look at this another way to somehow tie it into 2y and 2z. Now, let's say instead of using those green parallel lines to find 2y, let's use the two red ones. So let me make this red now. And this one red. And now I'm going to color this one the transversal. What's the relationship between this 2y and this x? What kind of angles are those now? Corresponding. What do I know about corresponding angles? They're congruent. So now to find the measure of y, I'm going to set 2y equal to 70, divide by 2, and y equals 35. So what you're going to have to do is just redraw and cover things up because you're going to have more than one transversal happening on your paper. Now I'm going to look at two different parallel lines and a different transversal for the 2y and the 2z. So maybe I should erase some of this so it's not so complicated. So far I know that this is 70. I also know that this is 70. So now if I use these two parallel lines and this transversal, I can again see that I've got some corresponding angles here. Same side interior angles. So these same side interior angles are supplements. So I know that this one is going to be 110. You could have also looked at it and you didn't have to necessarily do that one. You could have done this line parallel to this and this transversal. And then you could also have said 2z is corresponding to 110. So there's not one set way. Depends on how you turn your paper and which set of parallel lines you use. So z equals 55. So you can do these more than one way. Again, find two lines that have the arrows indicating that they're parallel, and then pick a third transversal line. One more slide. It's a science application. It's talking about a rainbow. So here it says, when sunlight enters a drop of rain, different colors of light leave the drop at different angles. This process is what makes a rainbow. For violet light, the measure of angle 2 is 40 degrees. They want us to find the measure of angle 1, and how do you know? So here are my lines. I've got my yellow parallels. They've got the arrow on them. And then I've got my transversal here, which is making angle 2 and angle 1. What would be the measure of angle 1 if angle 2 is 40? Anybody know what kind of angles those are? Yes.
They are alternate interior.
Beautiful. And what do we know about alternate interior? Beautiful. So the measure of angle 1 is also 40 degrees. The reason why they're alternate interior is if I close them in, They're inside those yellow parallel lines, and they're on opposite sides of the black transversal. So be able to pick out these angle pairs. We will be using these in our proofs. Tomorrow, we're going to see the converse of all of these. So right now, they're starting out by telling us if the lines are parallel, then the angles are congruent. Tomorrow, they're going to say, oh, if the angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So we'll be using all of this in our proofs. It's going to be a big part throughout the entire year of geometry. And again, these angle pairs are a big part of standardized testing. So your homework tonight is to do the 3-2 homework. To finish up your part of the presentation, you need to turn that into benchmark number 2. And it is a homework grade. And then tomorrow when you come in, we're going to go over this homework. We're going to do the warm-up and then learn 3-3.